In this next tutorial, we're going to make a top hat. And so we're going to expand upon what we've learned so far using Edit Poly tools. I'm going to click here in Perspective, make that active. I'm over here in Create. I'm going to click on Cylinder and expand Keyboard Entry. And now I'm going to go down to Radius and give it a radius of 100. And I'm going to give it a height of 10. Now before I click Create, I am going to come down to Parameters and set the height parameters to 1. And now I hit Create. And so if you look, here's my cylinder. I'm going to come and I'm going to click on Edged Faces. And you see that there's no segments on the side. If you happen to have segments on the side, I went to Modify here. Just reduce the number of height segments to 1 so that you don't have them anymore. All right. I'm just going to hit Z on my keyboard. It's going to zoom out. I'm going to come over here and maximize the viewport. All right. Here we go. We're going to get started on the top hat. So we're going to right click and say Convert to Editable Poly. Go into Polygon and click on the top. So this first new tool that I want to introduce you to under Edit Poly, and let me expand this so that you can see the rollout. As I switch between the polygons or the different tools, you can see them better. There's Polygon. Under Edit Polys, I'm going to open up Inset, and so Inset will create geometry. It's going to push it in by a numeric value and create geometry there. So we'll just click and drag on this spinner, bring it in, give us a nice wide brim on our hat, and then click the check mark for OK. All right. So now we got kind of the brim of our hat. If I make sure this cylinder or this circle here in the center is selected, I'm going to now click on Extrude. So Inset just kind of pushes geometry in, but Extrude, if I click on the settings, actually builds geometry up, right? So I can go negative and go inside. It gets dark there because you're seeing the back side of the polygon underneath. But if I make it go up, let's go ahead. I'm just going to type in 100 and hit OK. There we go. So now I have the top of the hat. Right? Now we want to make it a little bit more interesting, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on the very top if you don't have it already selected, and I'm going to click the Grow button, and notice how that grows my selection. Right? I can click Grow again, it'll grow it out further, but I don't want all that out, so I'm going to hit Shrink it back. All right, so I'm going to put a modifier on this object, but it's only going to affect what I currently have selected. So let's click and come down here to Taper, and now you can see the gizmo. Let's restore our viewport so you can see all the views and hit Z, or actually not the bottommost button, but the one above it, Zoom Extents All. There you go. So now you can kind of see it. So I'm going to take this and I want to taper the edges. So I go and I taper it. Now I'd like to give it a curve, but I don't have enough geometry. So let's remove that taper, and I'm going to come up here to Edge. I'm going to just, here in the front view, I'm going to click on any one of these tall edges that make up the overall body of the hat and click Ring, so I get every parallel edge going around. So just like when we put Bend on that cylinder, we need to make sure we have enough segments for the taper to work. So let's crank up the number of segments here to like 4 and click OK. And now in Polygon, looks like they're all selected. We could double check by either clicking on the top and then growing our selection, or even just clicking and dragging to region select the top. So I got the body of the hat selected again. Let's click, come down here to Taper, and now I can put a bend on it and then taper it out. There we go. So what do I have? We'll say 1.5 for the amount, and the curve will put -1. All right. So that's looking fun, right? That's a fun looking hat. Now, what I'm doing is, because you see next to Taper how there's a little polygon there, that means the Taper modifier is affecting what I currently have selected. So I'm going to right click on my model and say Convert to Edit Poly, and what that did is that made that change permanent. I baked that change in, is what we call it. If I come in here and go to Polygon, those polygons are still selected, but they've already been deformed to match that taper shape. So let's grab everything on the bottom. So there's a couple ways we can region select And then hold Alt and Region Select to deselect that part of the hat, or we can use our little orbit guy, click in negative space, just click on the one polygon on the bottom, and then grow. Now let's orbit around, and then grow again, because we want to get the brim of the hat. Because in the same way we just assigned a modifier to just the top of the hat, we want to put a modifier on the brim. And we're going to grab a Bend Modifier and put that on there. Now remember, sometimes you got to change the axis, and so currently it's not really doing us any good. Let's put a little value in there. What happens if we go to Y? You see here on the top, that's not what we're looking for, but X does it, right? X is giving us a nice shape here. This is looking pretty cool. Kind of just depends on what axis we want it. All right, I like it here in the front. It's bending up. It's perfect. So let's right click and say convert to edit poly. And now we do have this shape here. If I come in, I'm going to go to display. I'm going to turn off edges only. You can see that the software is dynamically drawing where those edges are. And so really we need to help it out. So I'm going to turn edges only back on. I'm going to click on just that one polygon on the bottom. And if it helps, click in negative space, then click on it. And I want to grow it because I want to have the very large polygon on the bottom and the edges that make, and the polygons that make up the mass of the brim. And I'm going to hit delete on my keyboard. So now if I was to orbit around, you'd only see the brim and the main body. See how it's shading dark? If I go to display, I can turn on back face cull. Now, what you're seeing is what's actually the visible polygons. The back sides are no longer displaying. All right, that's what we're seeing there. And so we do want to have geometry there. We want to have the inside, because if we want to turn it upside down and pull a rabbit out of it, right? So I'm going to actually put a modifier in here called shell. And what shell does is shell takes whatever you currently have for polygons and duplicates it facing the other way and makes a little brim. But I'm going to change the settings. I want to leave the outer amount at 0, but I want to set the inner amount to 2.5. There we go. And so now as I orbit around, you see it actually has an inside, it has a brim, you're not getting weird geometry. And we're going to right click and convert that at poly to make that permanent. Now, before we finish it, it is faceted. And so remember what we did with the rock, right? All we did was we just went into element and clicked on our model, which grabbed every polygon. And if I hit auto smooth, what that's going to do is that's going to automatically assign smoothing groups. And so if you look, if I select here, that's group 2. If I select here, that's group 1. It's automatically assigning those based on the fact that the angle changes so much, it's changing it there. So another thing we could do is we could go through, if you want, I'm going to make sure I'm on select. I'm going to hold control. And I'm just manually going to select these, holding control. And then let's zoom out and just orbit around, make sure I only have that one strip of polygons there selected. There we go. All right. Now what I can do is I can turn off ID2 and assign a different one. Let's just put 10 on it. Now, if you look at it, it looks like it has like a little band around it. And that's sort of what you can do with smoothing groups. The auto smoothing is going to work for you most often, work really good. There may be times you may want to manually go through and assign some smoothing groups though. So that's it for that one. We'll go ahead and we'll save this. Another thing we could start doing is start naming the objects in here, like top hat. Now this object has a name inside of here in case we wanted to bring it into another scene that we have. All right, so save that and turn that in.